Hi guys, Mark here. Welcome. In this video, we are throwing together a nice looking and practical lanyard based on the double snake knot. The lanyard is appropriate for carrying keys, wallets, knives, things like that. To make the lanyard, we are going to be using 2 snap hooks and 2 pieces of Paracord 550. Let's begin our tying by passing one of our snap hooks to the center of our 2 cords. So this here is the middle point of our 2 cords. I'm going to tie a Matthew Walker knot just above the snap hook. This knot, in my opinion, looks great, but it is optional. You can skip it and go directly into the double snake knots. So we have the 2 front ends on the right, the 2 back ends on the left. Going from left towards the right, we are going to tie an overhand knot using each of our ends. So the second end passes above the first one, then forms the overhand knot. The third end passes above the first 2 ends, like this, then forms the overhand knot. And our final end above the other 3 ends, then it forms an overhand knot. Tighten up a little bit, so you have end number 1, 2, 3, 4. Now pass your first end here all the way to the top next to this one here. Do the same with the second one and do the same with the third one. This collapses the knot into a nice looking shape, which is the Matthew Walker knot. Square it up a bit, start pulling on the ends, just to tighten up a bit. You will want to pull here to remove some slack out of these loops here and pull the slack into the ends. The same thing with the other loop here, again pulling slack into the ends. A correctly dressed Matthew Walker knot has its passes traveling parallel from left to right, neatly one next to the other. This is a very secure knot and a beautiful one, but it took me years to master the dressing process. I'm still learning, but the result is quite nice, at least in my opinion. From here on, the next step, the double snake knots. We are continuing with double snake knots. Usually I tie a loop onto a door handle and snap my snap hook onto it. This gives me tension while I'm working on my knots. Now, double snake knots, done just like regular snake knots, but with 2 strands in each hand. So on the left, we start with a loop, we pass the other 2 ends top down, through the loop, then behind the other end, and finally over the top into our initial loop. Tighten up to make your knot look nice. Now, in my experience, I don't like to tighten up too firmly, since I want my lanyard to move around a little bit, making it a bit more mobile. The tightness is up to you, so just continue the same knot for a while. A loop, the other set goes top down, through the loop, then behind the other end, and finally top down into the initial loop. Tighten up, dress the knot so that it looks nice. When you reach a sufficient length for your lanyard, let's finish it up. Grab your second snap hook and feed the 2 pairs of ends through the snap hook. So one coming from this side, the other pair from the other side. So a simple way of locking the snap hook into place. We're now going to tie a type of a diamond knot. First, I'm just going to stick some paper here. This is optional, just to make things easier to see. I'm going to attach a rubber band . And slide my 4 ends under the rubber band. Spreading them evenly around my lanyard. So with small gaps like this. With our setup complete, let's do our relatively simple tying. Grab your first end, pass it under, over, under, to the left side. Grab the next end, do the same thing. Under, over, under. The next end, same thing. Under, over, under. Final end, under, over, under. If you did this correctly, each of your ends ends up under a strand on the left. We continue by grabbing an end, passing it under the next end, then following this strand here. So, over, under, over. The next end, again under the next end, then follow this strand here. Over, under, over. The next end, again under the next end, double up this strand, over, under, over. The final end passes under an already used end and doubles up the last remaining strand, traveling towards the right side. Over, under, over. We are already at our final pass. Grab an end, which is exiting with an over. We start under 2, over 2, under 2, exiting on the left over 2. Grab the next end, doesn't matter which one. We are exiting with an over, re-enter, under 2, over 2, under 2, exiting, over 2 on the left. Grab the next end, exiting with an over, entering, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2 on the left. Our final end, again, is exiting over, we re-enter, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2 on the left. Our knot is pretty much tied. At this point, I'm going to finish up the ends, passing them under the knot to the right side. So grab an end. Usually I'm going to pass it under the entire knot like this. Then grab the next end, do the same thing. The next end, again, the same thing. And the final end, again, same thing. Remove your rubber band. Remove your paper. Then tighten up your knot. You always start with a strand coming out of the snap hook. You go through the knot, removing slack. Pulling the slack into one of your ends. Then you pick a new strand coming out of the snap hook and do the process yet again. Keep tightening until you have a nice looking knot, at which point we're going to trim the ends. Finally, I'm going to trim the ends as close to the knot as possible. Then I'm going to tuck my ends slightly under the knot. Not much. then roll my knot under a plank. So that's it, guys. This concludes our tutorial on the double snake knot paracord lanyard. We have the Matthew Walker knot, double snake knots, quite a flexible lanyard, with a beautiful decorative knot. Thank you very much for joining me today, and see ya next time.